I'm James. I'm a third year mechanical engineering student at the University of Manchester, and this channel is to help you study and focus on what truly matters. In this video, I'm going to go over 7 rules that I use on a daily basis to help me study and learn productively, effectively, and efficiently. My goal for this is to simplify everything that I've learned into one video. In the description, there'll be timestamps. You can skip to different parts. I'm going to leave a link in the description where you can click on it, and I'll leave all the resources. All of it should be free. There might be some books that you can buy that you could read if you want to learn more about it, which I recommend. The reason I've had to learn so much about studying is because I have dyslexia, which is a learning difficulty, and I had to learn how to study because I wasn't very good at it. And through all of these things that I've learned really helped me get 3 A stars in my A levels, be top of the class in my engineering degree, and more importantly, bring me a lot of fulfillment in my life from studying and learning deeply. So the first rule that I follow every single day is test yourself because it's hard. Testing has been found for a long time now, and the evidence and the literature is the best form of studying and learning new material. The reason for this is because 1, it helps you recall the information actively out your brain. 2, when you can't recall the information, it allows you to know what you don't know. And then 3, I think it actually helps you be more curious about the subject, because then you ask more questions and you can understand things not directly linked to the topic. But the bad thing about this is it's quite difficult. It's hard. People find it very uncomfortable. And there's a study reinforcing this that was done in 2006. So they had 2 groups of people. So they both studied the material for the very first time. The first group studied 3 times. So what do I mean by studying? Like repeated reading of the material, and which normally aims to reinforce familiarity without actually requiring you to recall the information actively out your brain. The second group had 3 active retrieving sessions. So like 3 sessions of testing themselves before the exam. So this could be solving past paper questions, doing recall flashcards of open-ended questions, and this enhances the learning and the recall. So we could probably assume that group 2, the ones that test themselves more, did better, and that's what actually happened. And the first group didn't do as well as the second group. But the weird thing about this study is that the first group felt more confident going into the exam than the second group. So the people that studied more, reread their notes more, and highlighted and summarized it, and were more familiar with the material, had more confidence compared to the people that had tested themselves and actively recalled the information from their brain. So the problem with this is that it's very difficult, because rereading your notes reinforces yourself to feel more familiar with the subject, which is actually not the thing that helps you do well in your final exam. So what is the best way of testing yourself? So we all know now that testing yourself is much better than summarizing, rereading your notes, or highlighting your notes, or any of these things. Testing yourself, right? So my personal experience as an engineering student, throughout my A levels and stuff like that, the best questions and the best ways I've found of testing myself is doing past paper questions, but also making flashcards. The way I make flashcards is by using Anki, which is this application that can store hundreds of questions for you. And it's the best way I've found to help me store questions so that I can recall them later, and recall them anywhere from my phone, from my laptop, and my iPad. So what are the best type of tests that you can use to help yourself do well in your exams? So from my personal experience as an engineering student, I found that open-ended questions, so like an Anki, you can have the front of your flashcard a question. That's a big broad question. It helps you recall the information and recollection and trying to think deeply about an idea. I find those more useful than like familiarity flashcards, which are more like multiple choice, image inclusion flashcards, and which are great for like memorizing specific names and specific patterns within diagrams and stuff like that, these can be a good starting point, but I found to actually deeply understand and learn material, it's much better to break down and group a lot of lecture slides into an overall big question. So I can explain this more of, so here is a question here. So I had this lecture slide and I had no idea what it was. When I go through my lecture slides, I just put the heading at the front, then at the back. And then when I go through them, I try and make the front a good question, ask ChatGPT, look up different resources and kind of implore my own curiosity, because I found that I enjoy studying when I have times alone, thinking about the subject, looking up, researching, finding the best question to ask. And this is where I think AI can come in to help you test yourself better and ask better questions. I think AI is a tool. I don't think it's a replacement. So try and paste in the lecture slide and ask questions to ChatGPT, like multiple threads of questions. And then maybe when you've clicked and you've actually understood what it's trying to ask, that lecture slide or that piece of material in a textbook, you can ask ChatGPT to make a big overall open-ended question for you, and it could help you do that if you're not familiar with making your own questions. But see here, this is a diagram which is about control engineering and gain margins, and for a stable and an unstable system, right? So I've got gain margin and phase margin. These are two things that are very similar, so you group them together, and it's a very long question, but when I read this question and it says explain by drawing a diagram, that diagram explains it. And if you understand the diagram and if you understand what KM and this angle here is doing, that when it passes this -1 point, it will make it unstable. And when it's inside that point, it's stable. And these things that help me, instead of just being familiar, I could ask specific questions like, what is gain margin? What is phase margin? Draw this diagram. But instead, I try and group it together and ask this open-ended question that helps me recollect and try and use my brain to recall the information out of my head. And any question can do when you're starting out making flashcards on Anki or doing it on a physical note card. But I found that actually really stressful doing it physical note cards, because it's very difficult to organize it when you have hundreds and hundreds of flashcards to go through. And Anki does that all for you. And it's free on computer. It helps you consolidate all the information, find a way of asking good questions around it. And then when you do your past paper questions that are made for you, you can look through your Anki flashcards and find the specific questions that are very similar, or add the question into your deck that is similar to that past paper question. There's actually been studies done with flashcards and people that make their own flashcards or use pre-made flashcards. And it's been found that actually making your own flashcards is a better way of studying and testing yourself, because it helps you learning the information. Because I think the whole point of going through a material, reading it, then thinking, what are the main questions of this? How can I test myself in this material? You don't have to write it down or store the questions, but I found that storing the questions in Anki and then coming back to them at a later date, which I'm going to go into the second point, which is spacing out your study sessions, is really important. And also it can kind of build this safety network, and it can make you feel a lot more secure, because you know that everything that you need to know and need to review is in Anki. So the second rule I follow every single day is spacing out my study sessions and the testing of the material. The great thing about Anki is this does it for you. It's automated. So when you test yourself originally, you get it right, it will give it to you in a day. Then after that day, it'll give it to you in a week. And after that week, it'll give it to you in a month. And the good thing about this is it helps you stop the forgetting curve. So the forgetting curve is when you first test yourself on the material, you will actually end up forgetting that material exponentially over time. The more repeats of that material, so every time you test yourself, on that final test, hopefully the forgetting curve should be a very delayed curve. So you will forget that material much longer than you would when you first tested yourself. So this is really useful, and what this backs up is to stop cramming. Start early, have a consistent pace, work at a natural pace, and just show up every single day. This is very difficult for some people, but if you can just make it a priority, a rule to do a little bit every day, an hour of testing yourself on the material that you're studying can add up to be massive. So a week before my exams, all my friends are stressing out. They're pulling all-nighters. I'm sleeping around 9 to 10 hours. I'm doing around 2-3 hours a day because it's built up. And I'm not stressed because I know I've been consistent and I've stopped that delaying curve. And it's helped me feel a lot less stressed and relaxed for exams if you're consistent. How you do this is, how I do it is, I use Anki, as I said, and I have all my flashcards on my phone, and I found like atomic study sessions throughout the day, like 5 minutes here and there when I've got time free. I'll just pull out my phone and I will review like my flashcards. So like after a lecture, or when I'm waiting in a queue, or if I'm traveling to go somewhere for like 10 or 20 minutes, I'll just pull out my phone and just review. That's the default. And I can get a lot of flashcards reviewed that way. And the cool thing about the phone now is that ChatGPT app on your phone is so good. So I just screenshot my screen of a flashcard I don't get. I ask ChatGPT about it and I can edit my flashcards on the go portably. And that's so useful, and I can't recommend it enough. Atomic study sessions, they really help. Another really useful thing about spacing is that when you learn the material for the very first time, it's so important to test yourself very soon afterwards. So how could you do this? So how I do this is I make my flashcards before my lecture, and then when I watch the lecture, I review my flashcards on my phone or my laptop or my iPad afterwards. And this has been found by research that it stops you forgetting the information by 50%. And I've started doing this even for when I learn people's names, like an hour afterwards, I'll be like, what's that person's name? And my memory is so bad that I sometimes forget it. But it helps me remember it. Like actively listening to your internal voice, ask yourself questions. And I sometimes talk about when you review the flashcards to make it more active, speaking out loud. And so that's something I try and do. Review it straight after you learn the material for the very first time. Trust in Anki's algorithm to space out the reviews for you. Start early, work early, so that you're not stressed and cramming like everybody else. Okay, even when the university system's so corrupt and it gives you only like a month to study for your exams, work early and try and blitz through all the information straight away and make the flashcards as good as possible, and iterate over that process of asking good questions through the material that you're learning, testing yourself very soon afterwards, and then keep making, editing, doing past paper questions, which is so important. And you'll be so good. You'll be so useful, and it will all work out, hopefully. So the third rule that I follow every day is embracing active rest. So what do I mean by active rest? Very similar to studying, actually. So you've got like passive learning and active learning. So passive rest is things like scrolling social media or binge watching shows on Netflix and stuff like that, which I think are great when you're with someone, but on your own I can find it is very passive. It's something you don't have to actively cooperate in. Active rest is something that requires a bit of mental effort. It can be physical as well. So examples that I have found that really helped me is like running, going for long walks in nature, creative hobbies like making these videos, playing my guitar throughout the day. And these activities embrace flow, and it makes me enjoy my time and have something to look forward to after studying. Mindful practices is like things like I like to journal a lot with my books, with my Kindle Scribe, and read books. I find that quite mindful, just slowing my brain down and like actually listening to an audiobook. I love lifting, doing my calisthenics workouts in the park with like a outdoor gym that's close to flat. Embracing in active forms of recovery, playing a board game with my friends. Monopoly is one of my favorites. I'm not the best at it, but it gives me joy, brings out my competitive nature. Things that require you to keep attention and focus on one singular thing. And I found that when I have more of those things in my life, so when I read more, even though I thought for a while, I shouldn't be reading, I should be using all my mental effort on studying my own material about engineering. But I found that when I study things outside engineering, like learning how to learn, like I've read a couple books from this video, watching like deep podcasts and stuff like that whilst I run or work out, these things help me study better and help me get into deeper forms of focus, because it's building my focus throughout all parts of the day. Another big thing about active rest is sleeping really well, like prioritizing sleep and becoming like a professional sleeper. Like, I know you can't get the best quality sleep all the time. I don't, but making it a priority, making it something that before your exams, leading up to your exams, something that you do prioritize and you don't sacrifice on, because there's multiple findings now that sleep is where the learning happens. It's where all the information that you've studied throughout the day, your sleep consolidates it and helps you remember it better. So really prioritizing that, having naps throughout the day, being kind to yourself, like treating yourself like a friend. Don't whip yourself and say like, I need to be studying more. If you don't feel good, take a day off. Being intentional and trying to plan in active rest and active recovery is much more important than passive recovery, in my opinion. Fourth rule is be intentional with your day and plan your day the night before you go to bed. I do it with my pocket notebook. I made an in-depth video of how I do that up there. But let me explain why I do this. The most important thing I've found when I study is planning when, where, and what I'm studying every single day, and being ultra intentional with that. Because I have found that when I get distracted and I lose track of the day, it's because I haven't been clear with what my own intention is for the day. So doing it with a physical form is great for me, because it's like a single purpose notebook that has one meaning, and I find it much more intentional and helps me simplify the things I have to do throughout the day into one page every day, and helps me not get overwhelmed and focus on the day and focus on the pace of the day and the things that are inside my control and not the things that are outside my control. I time block my time using this planner, and I try and limit myself to like 1 or 3 tasks that take 90 minutes or more. And it helps me simplify the process of planning my day. Why I think being intentional with when you're studying, where you're studying, and how you're studying is it gives you a way of reflecting on the depth of focus that you can get into. So let me describe this to you. I have found through my personal experience with using these notebooks and doing this for like 3 or 4 years that I feel the best now eating breakfast, waking up and going for a run in the morning, getting outside, stopping work at a period of time so I don't get overly stressed, so I've got strict schedule productivity, trying to make sure I do something for my mind and my body throughout the day so that I can be the best type of person for the people that I love around me. And making sure I have these disciplines, these habits I try and do every single day to help me be me, help me be proud of myself and have pride within myself so that I can be of service and help people around me that truly need my help, and I can help them, and be there for my girlfriend and my family and the ones that I love, and be true to myself. So why this is important for learning is because you can find the best times of the day that you like to study. Find time throughout the day where you can study. Find a place where you find that you can study the best. So an environment, creating an environment with no distractions, alone, finding periods of times where you can really get deep into focus, and being able to say no, to be able to focus and say yes to the things that truly matter. And being intentional with where your time goes, I think, is really important. And using a physical form for this has really helped me, because it helps me not get distracted on the tools like, oh, I need to use Notion and I need to use Apple reminders and all these things synchronizing up. And it really plays with my mind. I've gone through all of that, optimized it on my digital form. And the funny thing that I've always come back to is sometimes the more efficient things are not as effective as when they're inefficient. So writing out my day, planning out the day every single day is probably not the most efficient way of planning my day. But for me, I found it the most effective. It's something that helps me do the things that I say that I do. And it helps me think about, what do I want to do today? What do you want to do today? You know? And it allows me to actively simplify my life. The fifth rule that I follow every single day is trying to build a simple system that I can follow every day. After reading Deep Work, which I recommend, really helped me realize the importance of focus. And in Deep Work, he talks about this book called 4 Disciplines of Execution, which I haven't read, but the main premise of it is focus on the widely important. So that's the first discipline. Okay. Find out what the lead measure is for that goal. So for example, with studying and getting the best result in my exams, I found that the lead measure for me is reviewing my flashcards actively and synthesizing my past papers, the information into Anki, so that I can focus on that one lead measure, which Anki quantifies the amount of reviews that you do each day. And I can measure quantitatively the amount of studying I do each day. So number 1, focus on the widely important. You want to do the best in your exams, get the top mark, whatever, or just trying to focus and deeply study. Quantitate, like find out what the lead measure is for it. Then the third thing is create a scoreboard. Anki does this for you with a add-on called the heat map. I find that really useful because you can kind of see how many reviews you've done throughout the year, and you can see, have you been consistent? Have you actually created a streak? This is in Atomic Habits as well. When you want to create a habit that matters a lot to you, creating a heat map is so important because you can see, have I been doing it every day? Have I been consistent with the habits that I've been creating? And for me, that's really helped. Finding out how to measure something, a goal that you're trying to make, how to create a scoreboard that makes sure that you're not losing the streak. And then the third thing is having some sort of accountability each week. So the way you could do this is have a friend who is doing a similar thing to you in your course, and then you meet up once a week and see if you're aligned with the goals that you're saying that you want to achieve. So if you're, have you reviewed Anki every single day on your heat map? Can you see that? Have you added flashcards? Have you deeply interrogated the subject? Have you done the past paper questions? And asking these questions to help yourself review each week and keep yourself accountable. A way that I do this is just doing like looking back over my notebook each week, look at my Anki, see the reviews that I've done. You don't have to do this each week, but some sort of accountability network to see if you're doing it. And this is great because building a simple system helps you execute, helps you do the thing. Like it helps you not get overwhelmed and worried about not doing the thing. It just helps you focus on action, because the most important thing is working and being effective and doing the right things and not the wrong things. So try and test yourself as much as possible. Focus on your active rest, planning your day, making sure that you're putting that testing and that's like learning of the information, that studying the information into your day, planning it, where it's going to be, and building a simple system that is easy for you to follow and not overcomplicating things has really helped me especially when there's all these crazy tools out there pulling for your attention. So the sixth rule I like to remind myself is to focus on the depth over the length. So why being intentional with your day is really useful is because you can reflect each day on the study sessions that you do and how deep they are. So what I mean by that is when you're studying, are you focusing on one thing at once? Or are you like constantly checking your email or flipping between using your phone throughout your study session? Try and measure how well you're studying in those sessions and really being overly obsessed with it. And what you'll find is actually when you study for like 2 blocks of 90 minutes, like really deeply and really just get focused on one thing and just making your eyes go into one part of your screen. I know it sounds strange, but like really focusing your vision in on one thing and doing that for long periods of time for like 90 minutes or so. When you can do that, you'll find yourself being knackered because it's hard. Okay. It's like working out. Not everybody likes to do it, but when you can train yourself to really tunnel vision in for like 90 minutes on one thing, it's a superpower. So focus on depth over length. If you're studying for long periods of time right now, reading notes, summarizing them, studying, just try and focus on testing yourself for one period of time. Take time to really get deep on a topic. So like for me at the moment, when I review my flashcards, I like to just do one module and just like really go deep on that for like a day or something. And then move on to the next one when I finished. And I found that I can get a lot done by doing that, just getting really curious and obsessed about something, just let myself ask so many questions and focus on one thing at once. It really helps you develop that ability to learn deeply. And on YouTube, there's a lot of people, they say, study more, study 12 hours a day, and it's all this stuff. And that's great, but it's something you can see, right? You can see how long people are studying, but the things you can't see is what's going on in here. And the only person that can see that or feel that is you. And that's why this is important, because when you look at it and you look at your week or your reflection or whatever, or when you go to bed and making your day plan for the tomorrow, you can see how focused and effective each hour or 90 minutes or 3 hours or 4 hour period that you studied was, and trying to get better at that. And we talked about previously a simple system of a lead measure. The more I've studied, the more I've studied for ages now, I've done my A-levels now, my third year at university. The more I've realized that the actual lead measure for me isn't really Anki. It's great to have Anki because I can quantify it, it's easy, but it's trying to build that ability to focus, that ability to sit down and embrace the suck, embrace the uncomfortable feeling of testing myself and trying to learn information and ask good quality questions. So the 7th rule is eliminate obstacles. So what do I mean by obstacles? When we have created our wildly ambitious goal, the one that we're focusing all of our energy on at that period of time, when you're planning your day and you're being honest with yourself, there will be obstacles that come in the way. Things that you either distract yourself with or other people distracting you. And the best way I've found to do this is to try and remove them or make it difficult to do it. I recommend reading Atomic Habits if you struggle with addiction and stuff like that, because it helps you realize how to break bad habits. And the way you can do it is by making it invisible, making it hard to do, removing the cue and trying to make it less satisfying to do that thing. This is something I struggle with a lot, but it's something that at least I know what my obstacles are, and writing them down on a piece of paper, seeing where you spend your time and seeing what are the obstacles that you face, I have found to be really important to get what I want, because inevitably if you want something, you're going to have to sacrifice something to get it, like your time, your energy, your money, like everything really. Like doing my degree, spending my own money on getting in debt to do an engineering degree in England, is a sacrifice, but something that's worth it for me because it's meaningful for my goal. So what you want, you have to sacrifice something. And this is what, like, I think the army do as well. They find out what the obstacles that they want and they try and remove them. And so, for example, for me, when I was like 14, 15, I started studying. I realized I couldn't focus because I had all the social medias at that period of time. I was constantly texting my friends, trying to be cool, trying to climb the status quo, trying to be the coolest kid in town, which I really wasn't. I'm not. But I deleted social media. That was a sacrifice I took. It helped me focus my mind on one thing at once. I'm not recommending you to do that because it's kind of, I think there is great value and joy from social media if you can control yourself and use it in moderation. But something that I just found that when I went without it for a month, I didn't miss it. Something I didn't like. Addiction of mine is watching YouTube videos, because YouTube can be a tremendous platform for information to understand things. So like for my degree, I find there's some great YouTube videos to help me understand materials from questions that I don't know, but trying to moderate that and not heavily rely on other people to do the heavy lifting and the thinking for you, because I can find that quite passive at times. So trying to understand your patterns, and this is something that I'm not great at, and it's something I'm trying to improve on every single day, is like when I'm sad at a period of time or I'm feeling low, I'll just spend all day inside. I'll forget to plan my day and know where it is. I'll beat myself up for it. I feel awful because I wasn't as productive as I wanted to be. And sometimes it's okay to just write that day off and just know what the obstacle was for that day and try and learn from it. Because I love the movie Lion King. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And there's this amazing quote, like, the past can hurt, but the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. And whatever it is in your life, be honest with it and try and learn from it. So find out what your obstacles are, try and remove them, and you'll be off to the races for focusing.